Breakfast with Brett. This is a segment of the show where we talk about what ifs. Today's theme, World War II. Does anyone want to start off?
Well, this one has been on my mind, Brett. What if Pearl Harbor never happened?
Then perhaps the U.S. would not be a world power like it is today.
I think that it would have actually helped us.
How?
Well, we could have actually focused on internal problems instead of getting involved in world problems. Perhaps we could have not been involved in the Cold War.
Well, that's ridiculous because then Europe wouldn't be under control of the Nazis, and Japan could control Russia, Korea, and eventually lead to us.
What if the U.S. did not aid Japan with oil? Then what would happen?
I believe that Japan would partner up with another country and make a super alliance and make it more difficult to win the war.
Well, on the other hand, the U.S. could use supplies to give to Britain or to France.
That money that we got could help us get out of the Great Depression.
I agree.
I have one. What if we did not aid Europe after World War II?
Well, then Europe would perhaps fall to communism.
Yeah, then the Cold War would be much intense.
We could have fallen into communism.
And then Russia would maybe have been the greatest country today.
I'm glad that didn't happen. Does anyone have another one?
What if Germany won the war?
Then capitalism would not exist, or the U.S. would not be the same.
The U.S. would be in a worse depression than Germany was since our banks were helping the Allies.
Well, the U.S. could perhaps have been a different country than it is today.
Okay, I would say the same. I have one. What if the U.S. did not get involved in World War II and stayed isolationist?
The U.S. would have to fight a war with Japan and the Nazis.
The U.S. would fight a two-front war.
Also, the U.S. would not be supported by Britain and France if Germany won.
Maybe Germany would have took part of the U.S. and claim it as their own.
I agree with that. Well, that's enough time for today, folks. And remember, always be thorough, thoughtful, and accurate. Good night, America.
Tomorrow.
Welcome back to Breakfast with Brett. This is your host, Brett Johnson. This is a segment of the show where we talk about what ifs. The theme for today is civil rights. So do you guys have anything to talk about?
Well, one thing that I had was that, what if MLK did not have a dream?
So you're saying, what if he wasn't involved in civil rights?
If he was not involved, minorities would probably still be fighting for civil rights.
Racial tensions are still a thing today, so it would increase those tensions even more.
Also, the civil rights movement would be such a mess if it would be less supported.
It would also allow the radical civil rights leaders like Malcolm X to take control of the movement.
I agree. If Martin Luther King was not involved in the civil rights movement, it would have been a major disaster, and minorities would probably still be fighting for their rights today.
I have a question. What if Malcolm X was not involved in the civil rights movement?
I feel that without Malcolm, the civil rights movement would have been much more organized and would have gotten rights that they actually received.
Well, in my opinion, I feel like their right would have been the same.
I believe that it would have appealed to non-minorities, and they would have sided with civil rights earlier. You had something to say, Evelyn?
Well, my what if is, what if President Truman did not desegregate the military or government?
Then we probably wouldn't have had an African-American president.
The pathway to civil rights would also be different.
Also, Truman lit the torch for civil rights, so without this action, who would have actually lit the torch?
I say civil rights would be different and have a different approach. It also would have affected the presidential election of 2008.
Well, Brett, my what if is, what if segregation wasn't a thing in the 1960s?
Well, there would be peace and actually begin to focus on problems that do not mention race or nationality.
You couldn't have said it any better, Evelyn.
I also agree.
Those are wise words, Evelyn. Anyone else?
What if Lyndon Johnson had lost the presidential election over Barry Goldwater?
Well, Lyndon Johnson was the civil rights best friend and passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So without this, minorities would not have a voice in the world today.
No.
That's all the time we have here, folks. And remember, throw nothing ever. Back to you, Brett.
Thanks, Brett. Now back to you.
Welcome back to Breakfast with Brett. It's a segment of the show where we talk about what ifs. Today's theme is 9/11. Does anyone have anything to say?
What if we never invaded Iraq?
Well, if we never invaded Iraq, then we wouldn't have any problems with that country today.
And also, we wouldn't be wasting so much money on the military.
And we would not be so militaristic as we are today.
I agree with you, Lynn. I have one. What if so many jets weren't at training during the attack?
We could have easily avoided the attack on the World Trade Center.
That is true. How would you deal with the civilians?
The attack was not avoidable. It was bound to happen.
I agree with this. It was bound to happen.
One that I had been thinking about was, what if Iraq did not have oil?
The answer is simple. We would not be invading them or plan to invade them.
That is true. We would be invading someone else.
That the U.S. has to admit that they would have an oil problem.
We'd be fighting someone else, and Iraq would be irrelevant to us.
One that I wanted to bring up to the table was, what if national security was not enforced?
Then many people would get away with several crimes.
Also, the certain ethnical and religious groups would not be discriminated.
That is true. Maybe incidents like the one on Delta Airlines would not exist.
One that I have been saving is, what if 9/11 never happened? How would the world be shaped then?
Well, I think much of the laws we have today would be much more lenient.
Also, racial and religious discrimination would not be present day.
Also, the Middle East would not be relevant like it is today.
The war on terrorism would not exist.
I agree with this all. Well, that's all the time we have here, folks. And remember, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, hit the subscribe button or follow me on my Twitter at Brett Johnson.
Okay. Bond happened.
Bound!
Wait, say that again.
I agree with this. It was bound to happen.
Do with us.
So, okay, dude, let her do it again.
Wait, what? It was bound to happen.
It was bad. I'm sorry to write the script in 20 minutes.
I literally
you know?
told you Bond and you didn't fix it.
Oh.
And remember.
One.
You guys know.
No, you
Oh.
start over. That's all the time we have for today.
So that's all.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, now.
Welcome back to Boom. Alright.
And then do the little thing like that.
And remember, throw nothing
No,
ever.
do
Oh.
You have to end it.
Wait, I thought
Roll.
we were at the very
Yeah,
end.
I know. That's...
Alright, folks.
Well, alright, folks. That's all the time we have here today. And remember.
I know. She doesn't have it.
My bad. What do you want me to do? Folks, that's all the time we have here. Back to you, Tammy.
Sammy.
I don't know. Should I just be like, back to you, Brett?
Say who you are.
I am. That's why. That makes it funny. I'm here.
Dude, I swear.
Yeah, still recording. This is the
I'm just gonna-
bloopers. This is
yeah,
the
but I'm
bloopers.
just
Okay.
gonna